Well, welcome back, everyone. Uh, I am Michael Sunleitner. As you may know, those of you who are watching the recording who are not enrolled in this course may know now that this is session number 10 out of 30 in a course entitled Gandhi and King, Soul Force and Social Change. Today, the course is going to be looking at Gandhi's guidelines for his nonviolent action strategy called Satyagraha. I have some announcements. We will have some things to discuss at the beginning of this session, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then we will begin to look at some of the guidelines, which are very controversial. I hope they will hold your interest. Today, we will also experiment electronically online with having some breakout groups. I hope that that experiment will work and that everyone then will be able to participate with a smaller group to discuss some of these guidelines. And then we will finish, of course, our 80-minute session today with more discussion in the group as a whole. So we'll start with questions and announcements, have a bit of a lecture, and then finish with both breakout groups and also some discussion as a whole. That's the plan. First, an announcement or two. This is good news for Sibi and others that may be watching. I have confirmed with MS John, who is an esteemed Gandhi scholar in India, that he will be joining us for a presentation 1 week from today. So thankfully, you won't have to listen to me all of the time. MS John has long been the editor of Gandhi Marg, the foremost journal of Gandhi in the world. He is a professor emeritus from Mahatma Gandhi University in Kottayam, Kerala, where I did some of my Fulbright scholar work some 15 years back. I've known MS John for some time, as you can hear, and he is my superior in his knowledge of Gandhi. I'm happy that he can share with you. That's 1 week from today. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss? There is one housekeeping measure. Let me warn you in advance that we will have a small revolution, likely, tomorrow in Friday's session. At this point in time, only 6 out of nearly 40 people who have enrolled in this course have turned in their first assignment. I would like to discuss that reality tomorrow. I think, honestly, this is partly due to my poor communication. Partly. And it may also be related to other realities. Let me just say that I believe that my experience teaching in India and elsewhere, including, of course, the United States, tells me that the best students are often very good at telling and recounting what has been learned. But they have not often been taught very well to share their own opinions. Critical thinking is not a primary objective in many educational systems. I want you to repeat what I have said that is true. Repeat, repeat, memorize, memorize. This is too often the dominant view, and it is not the fault of any of us who have been in that educational system that we are not used to sharing our own opinions. I have been inspired by Gandhi's Ne Talim, educational philosophy. That's new education, educational philosophy, which is anti-colonial, which puts a premium on many things, including critical thinking. Gandhi himself did not want Gandhians. Gandhi himself wanted everyone to learn to seek their own truth, hold firm to their own truth, to be willing to disagree with him and anyone else, and say why they disagree. He wanted critical thinking. I want critical thinking. And in this course, of the 6 people who turned in their assignments, I think only 2 actually shared their own personal opinions. And this is not a criticism, you understand, of any of you. It is a criticism of the educational system that is too often done worldwide. It trains bureaucrats, it trains technocrats, it highly educated people obey, regurgitate, and share information that they have learned, but don't think much about it. Sadly, that is very true in the United States also. So the proposal I'm refining for tomorrow that I will share with you will propose to slightly change the requirements of this course. I hope making them more able to be met by more of you, but also to emphasize critical thinking. So, warned, come to tomorrow's class and you may enjoy a little bit of a revolution. We move from truth to truth, yes? And I am very self-critical. I believe that the course that the requirements that I originally set may not have been the best. And so I want to improve for you. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss a little in the news or otherwise? There's a lot happening, not only the upcoming German elections about a week from now, but also, of course, Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin have their representatives in Saudi Arabia now. Working
Michael,
on a deal. Working on a deal will bring peace to the war in Ukraine. Yes, it will. Yeah, it will. Of course, we don't have Ukraine being part of those talks. We don't have Europe being part of those talks. It's just between the United States and Russia. Oh, and by the way, we heard yesterday that the president of Ukraine is a dictator, and he actually started the war. That was what Mr. Trump said.
yeah,
I'm shaking my head because some people's reality is in their own mind and does not really have a lot of foundation in this world. It's pretty obvious that it was Russian troops that invaded Ukraine. Now, why they did that, we can discuss if you want sometime, and there may be reasons why Ukraine can be partly at fault. But it was Russia that actually began the war. And Mr. Trump, well, he's a legend in his own mind. So there is plenty for us to discuss that relates to the seeking of truth.
Michael, I would like to know uh, Trump's behavior all of a sudden towards India has changed radically. So how is it affecting people living in United States who are from India with Indian citizenship? Are there some racial fallout of this thing against Indians in United States?
Well, for those who already have U.S. citizenship, there is not yet any reason to worry about deportation or anything like that.
I meant not legally, but rather socially, because when this kind of environment becomes in society, then if somebody develops a bias, then it doesn't matter whether the person is legally here or not here. People start to have a biased view and discrimination. In that sense, I'm asking in society.
Well, sadly, white supremacy is not new in the United States. The country was founded on white supremacy. Um, and it continues to this time. It was white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males that were the original 13 colonies. The primary non-white people at that time were black slaves who were not people. Legally, they were considered to be 3/5 of a human being. Can you believe that? And of course, Native Americans, who were here about 15,000 years before the whites came. And they came to be frequently thought of as better dead. A frequently repeated statement in the 1830s by then President Andrew Jackson was that the only good Indian, that is Native American, was a dead Indian. The United States has been founded on white supremacy and racism from the beginning. When Mr. Trump says, "Make America great again," the indications are that he's looking to the past, even as far as the 1890s. A new golden age for America. Well, the words golden age refer to the 1890s, when exceptionally rich people, J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, others, were known as robber barons. The super wealthy had their way. Mr. Trump would appear to be idealizing that period and wanting to return to it. That golden age was a golden age of white supremacy, which means, of course, that people who are of a different skin color than I am will likely experience increased discrimination and stereotyping today. That is not the United States that I desire, of course, and that many people want for the future. It's a long response, Amit, but I wish Mr. Trump were the problem. He is not. The problem is deeply rooted in U.S. culture. He is a symptom, a very loud and disturbing symptom of problems that have very deep roots.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, good evening. This is Sushil here.
Hello, Shushil.
Yeah, how are you doing, Michael?
I'm depressing myself with my own words.
Why, Michael? Why?
Because I want to be honest, and yet, and it is depressing.
Okay.
What is happening politically in the United States now will adversely affect the world for years to come.
Is there any chance for Donald Trump for next elections that again he will call back all this immigrants back to US, that he will promise them a citizenship to make immigrants happy?
Is there a possibility? Of course. St. Paul, of course, persecuted Christians before he was struck blind on the road to Damascus. He converted to revere Jesus Christ. Anything is possible. If it could happen to Paul, I suppose it could happen to Mr. Trump. On the other hand, I would not bet on it.
It's all about world politics.
Well, it's all about racism and the complications of American culture. But I do think there will be a change in 2 years. He is offending enough people in the United States with laying them off from work by destroying many agencies of the US government that people have come to not just accept, but value. I think he will reap what he sows within 2 years. And the Republican Party will, I expect, lose the legislative branch, and he will not have so much power. But these next 2 years could be very, very painful for many, many people. In Ukraine, in Palestine, and in the United States.
Also for Europe, because the Vice President of United States came to the Munich summit, and he went to meet the far right-wing leader here, and before the election, it's quite uncalled for here in Germany.
And he lectured you about how you do not take care of your own people. It's very difficult to listen to someone lecture other people on improving policies for their people when the United States does not do so for its own. In Germany, you can go to university virtually for free. In the United States, it's all for the wealthy.
Also for the health system is quite good here. If somebody is not rich, it is okay. There are social security nets. You can really avail good health system facilities, and you don't have to be rich. I heard in United States it's otherwise. If you don't have money, then good luck.
It's very serious. The United States extended a policy for healthcare for the poor called Medicaid in 1965. Mr. Trump is trying to cut that back. There will be many millions, probably 20 to 40 million people in the United States who will not have health care after he has saved money that he considers to be wasteful. There are a lot of battles in the courts. He will not win many of them. But 1/3 of the judges in our court system now have been appointed by Mr. Trump, including 4 members of the US Supreme Court. And so it's going to be a very difficult 2 years. It doesn't take a very bright person to see that. Even I can see that.
Michael, what are the most important political decisions has been taken by the Trump government to make America great again?
First, rephrase that. What he's really trying to do is make America white again. And because that was the way it was in the 1890s. And I think he is fighting against history. Nearly half the US population today is non-white, demographically, through immigration and through birth rates in non-white communities. Mr. Trump and many of his supporters are very disturbed by that. That is why they want to deport so many people and frighten people to leave who are not white. That is his first priority. And one can see it being manifest in increased quotas for deportations. His Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, it's called, is seeking to deport at least 1,000 people per day. That's a quota. If they don't meet their quota, then they can lose their jobs. So there are currently sweeps being made of workplaces where people without proper documentation may be caught up and forced to leave. Yesterday, a Mexican-American, no, it was a Venezuelan woman, was traveling with 2 of her 4 children in a car, and she was pulled over by the police in Arizona for going too slow. She was breaking the law by going too slow in her car. The police pulled her over, arrested her, and deported her and those 2 children back to Venezuela. She didn't have proper papers, and she was considered to be a criminal for driving too slow. 2 of her other children were not in the car. They remain in the United States in protective custody. He's breaking up families. He's terrorizing people who don't have proper documentation. It's very disturbing. It is not the atmosphere may be very similar to what was in Germany in the early 1930s. The United States has no final solution. We're not planning, I don't think, to exterminate people at this point. But the United States policies are anti-immigrant, anti-white, and very expansionistic.
Can I maybe, first of all, thank you for giving a little bit of an insight, and it sounds, well, scaring, very scaring actually. If we put it a little bit more on the international level, like on the international organizations level. So obviously the US with the US Ed, I think it's called, like withheld all their development fundings and their development money. And also obviously by not funding the World Health Organization anymore, they also like kind of losing funds to do like all the vaccination campaigns, a lot of medical systems worldwide. So my question would be, I don't see any reaction at the moment. Like when I look at the United Nations, also at Europe, like obviously kind of people and states are noticing that, but nobody really has an answer. Nobody's really stepping in saying like, no, we're going to keep those programs up and we just need to like stand together and kind of like stabilize what the US is taking out of these programs. So my question would be, do you think that there will be an international answer and that actually like the international organizations are able to kind of continue their work in a good way and probably even like progress by the US pulling out? Or do you not see any reaction? Because like I said, I don't really see any real reactions or any real movements at the moment.
Well, first, the World Health Organization depends on funding 25% from the United States. When that is cut, if others don't step forward with the money, those programs will seriously suffer. The USAID, for all of the criticisms that I could also make of it as a tool of self-interested U.S. policy, still the $17 billion that are in the USAID budget are often used, strategically at least, in Africa and elsewhere, to reduce AIDS, to reduce medical problems like monkeypox and Ebola. And without that money cut down to zero, Africa in particular may have a serious increased health emergency. Can the United Nations or other organizations step up? Yes. Will they? I don't know. But the United States is clearly stepping back and creating chaos as we are not showing our caring for the rest of the world. Well, I'll make a deal with Zelensky in Ukraine. Maybe we'll try to protect Ukraine on condition that Ukraine gives us, the United States, half of its natural resources. We only want half. What? What nation would agree to such a deal? That is pure mafia bulliness. It's embezzlement. That's crazy. Zelensky could never agree to that, and look in the mirror. So we're in a very tough time, and I don't want to depress you. Perhaps at this point we can go back a little to Gandhi and our discussion scheduled for the day. This has taken the first half hour of our 80 minutes. If 12 guidelines, 8 of them are listed on this sheet, and they're in groups of 4. This is from my doctoral dissertation. These guidelines were reviewed by one of Gandhi's personal secretaries, Pyarlal Nayar, who served as kind of a consultant on my doctoral dissertation work on Gandhi. I also made use of these in a presentation at Gujarat Vidyapit some 15 years back when Narayan Desai was the chancellor at Gujarat Vidyapit. And he also thought that these were accurate to the spirit of Gandhi. So the first set of 4 guidelines relate to truth or sat. The second 4 to ahimsa, love. The third set of 4 to tapas or voluntary suffering. The first that relates to Gandhi's belief in sat or truth, it may be described as reflected in what is called an axiom, the law of progression. The basic idea is that we progress from truth to truth. We never claim to have the absolute truth, according to Gandhi. The goal of the Satyagrahi, that person who holds firm to the truth as he sees it, is to hold firm, but always listen to others and modify the views as they learn new information. So the idea is always to progress towards truth, the law of progression. How do you do that, according to Gandhi, in a practical way? Number 1, conduct of actions must be without secrecy. Ooh, we can come back to that one. That's very, very debatable. The second, original demands may be raised only if the opponent raises new issues during the course of a campaign. 3, original demands may be lowered only if reflection leads to an admission of their being wrong in the first place. And 4, while compromise on non-essentials is permissible, bargaining has no place. So first, truth, according to Gandhi, requires that we act without secrecy. But Gandhi, that's not practical. Don't you understand? If we're honest and truthful with our opponent will have an advantage. They will call more police to the demonstrations that we have, arrest us more easily because we have no secrets. That makes no sense, Mr. Gandhi. Gandhi's response, and I hope you can understand this in the context of his worldview, which we have spent the last 4 class periods looking at. Gandhi would respond by saying, so do you believe in the precept that you reap what you sow? So if you sow secrecy, you will reap secrecy. If you sow honesty, you will reap honesty. This is karma. It also relates to the golden rule. Do to others as you would have them do. Would you be secretive towards others? Do you want them to be secretive towards you? We must be the change we want to see in the world. For Gandhi, that includes you must be fearless, or at least control your fears, and act without secrecy. That's a tough one. That invites, of course, tapas. It invites sacrifice because you can expect your opponent to take advantage of your being so honest. But if you want to bring honesty and truthfulness out in the opponent, you need to practice it yourself. Gandhi's very firm. You notice numbers 2 and 3 are very, very unlike typical US labor negotiations. If I'm in a labor union in the United States and I want, let's say, a $1 per hour increase in wages, I'll ask for $2. I'll demand $2. And then the opponent might say, how about 50 cents? And then we will compromise maybe on $1, which is what I really want, right? That's a typical bargaining technique. Gandhi doesn't do that. He considers that to be untruthful. He would say, you don't really demand $2. You don't expect to get $2. You're being dishonest. Your original demands should be the maximum and the minimum of what your research tells you should be asking for. If it's $1 an hour, that is your truth. You hold firm to that truth. And you do not raise the demands unless the opponent raises new issues during the campaign. Maybe the opponent would say something like, okay, if we're going to give you $1 an hour increase, we won't cover your healthcare needs. And Gandhi would say, well, that's a new issue that you're raising in the course of the campaign. And we can add healthcare to the demands that we are placing before you. So Gandhi would say, if the opponent raises a new issue, you can, of course, add that to your campaign. But he also would say, you don't raise your demands normally, and you don't lower your demands. If $1 per hour is your truth, you'd never lower it unless you come to believe that it was too great a demand in the first place, that it was unjust. So Gandhi doesn't bargain. After he does his homework, his research, he sets forward his demand, and that does not change. It does not increase, it does not decrease, unless the circumstances occur that I just mentioned. And so he will compromise on language. So if he's demanding independence for India, and the British want to call it home rule, he's happy to call it home rule. If the British say, well, we'll give you home rule if you join the Commonwealth of Nations, that is the association of kind of free trade countries that were formerly colonies, and now they will be part of an economic free trade system. Gandhi might say, oh, we can do that. That's not essential. We can always withdraw from that later. But you must give us independence. What you call it, a few conditions that might be related to it, are not so important. But the rose must be a rose, even if you don't call it a rose. No bargaining. So Gandhi's attitude towards truth and the law of progression is you don't bargain for truth, you hold firm to it. You interact with other people, you may learn from them and then change your truth to something new in the future, but you do not bargain. You do not compromise in the normal way that we would say a labor union would be compromising in a negotiation. Before we go too far, what do you think about these first 4 guidelines? He's very different from many people in the West in their way of looking at organizing. No secrecy. As you're thinking about that, we will have some small breakout rooms in about 10 minutes. Let's go to the second set of 4 under ahimsa and nonviolence. Under ahimsa, love, nonviolence, there is what he calls the law of distinction. This is, for me, an extremely important rule. Basically, you distinguish between a person and a person's actions. The person is a child of God. Jan Smuts is a child of God. Adolf Hitler is a child of God. What their policies are, what their actions are, what they're saying and doing, that is different than who they are. You distinguish between the person and the actions. Sometimes this comes out with, you can hate the sin, but not the sinner. Gandhi believes that never does a person's actions and how they are at this moment in time, never does that define who they can be in the future. We can all evolve. We can all change. We can all become more enlightened. And so for Gandhi, you should always, in your mind, separate the person from the person's actions. The person is your brother or sister, your father or your mother. Their actions may be despicable, but you still should love the person. You might have to repeat that 8 or 10 times, but for Gandhi, that is absolutely central. It leads to 4 guidelines. 1, nonviolence towards the physical presence of all people is necessary. You never return violence for violence. That is, you never return intentional physical harm for whatever harm might be done to you. The Satyagrahi has to at least believe in tactical nonviolence. Number 2, nonviolence in thought and language towards all people is of great importance. What does that mean? Well, back to the law of distinction. Gandhi would never call any person a racist. He would never call any person a woman hater or a homophobic bastard. He would not use those kinds of language. Because when you label a person by their current behavior or attitude, it makes it far more difficult for them to listen to you. You've lost communication. So for Gandhi, he would not say, John Smuts, leader of the Afrikaans Party in South Africa, you racist, you discriminate against people of color, you exploit them, you racist. He would never say that. The way he uses language is more like, John Smuts, my brother, I know that you have love in your heart. Your policies have a very serious harm in their racist impacts. Your actions are racist. You yourself can be a better person. You yourself can go above that. He never labels the person by their actions. Think about that a bit. For Gandhi, it's fundamental to communication. Once I label you as anything, let's say I label you as a stupid person, does that make you more likely to listen to me? Does it make it more likely that you will share your views of truth with me? No. That sort of labeling, psychologically, Gandhi believes, is counterproductive. I must be willing and able to listen to the views of all of the blind people in the room for me to see the whole elephant. Number 3, you must have patient willingness to accept change over time. You take care of the means. Love is the means to truth. You must take care of the means, and the end will take care of itself. You cannot really determine the pace of change. You don't know how long it may take for the British to give you independence. In a sense, they don't have to give it to you. You've already taken it. If you rule yourselves, no one can rule you. You're independent the moment you say, I will not be ruled. And last, not least, constructive program associated with Sarvodaya is the prime basis for facilitating change. If we unite ourselves in serving one another in community, in nonviolence, we lay the foundation for the future. Constructive program like Hindu-Muslim unity, constructive program like Ney Talim, new education policy, the uplift of women and the education of women, that's constructive program. These are the foundations upon which a more effective nonviolent resistance campaign can be built. In fact, if the constructive program activity is sufficiently successful, you may not have to do any resistance at all. The new society will simply grow up in the body of the old and will simply take it over. So nonviolence is the means to truth. Practicing the law of distinction is the way to progress from truth to truth. These guidelines are difficult. If you're to have any breakout room time, if we want to do that experiment today, I would suggest that we put the last slide up, which is tapas, self-suffering. And you can read it, you can see it. You can also take a screenshot of it. And if we successfully get into breakout rooms, I think there are, well, it looks like there aren't too many people in this group today. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. We'll have about 6 people in each group. Do you want to try that, Harshal?
Yes, let's do it. If everybody is okay.
Yes, sir.
Shall we try that? And the expectation is then when you're in a group of only 5 or 6 people, that you have to say something. Right? The idea is you please participate. You don't listen to me anymore. And I would like you to discuss the idea of tapas and the 4 guidelines Gandhi has under tapas. See if you can, how far you can get in 15 minutes.